The blistering afternoon sun beat down relentlessly on National Highway 8, turning the asphalt into a shimmering, distorted mirage. For miles in either direction, there was nothing but barren fields, dust, and the occasional thorny acacia tree. It was the kind of heat that made engines groan and human tempers flare. Raman Oberoi, a multi-millionaire industrialist from Delhi, was experiencing both. He stood on the dusty shoulder of the highway, wiping beads of sweat from his forehead with a silk handkerchief that was already soaked. His custom-made Italian suit felt like a furnace. A few feet away, his luxury German sedan sat with its hood popped open, hissed defensively, and released a steady, pathetic plume of white steam into the sky. Raman's driver, a young man named Mahan, was frantically poking around the engine bay with a wrench, his shirt drenched in sweat. Behind them, standing near the rear bumper with his arms crossed and a hand on his holster, was Viram, Raman's personal armed security guard. Viram's eyes scanned the empty horizon, his rigid posture screaming discomfort in the oppressive heat. "Well? What is taking so long?" Raman barked, his voice dripping with aristocratic impatience. "I have a board meeting in Jaipur in 3 hours, Mahan. If I miss this merger, it costs us cause. Fix it." "Sir, the radiator hose has completely split, and the coolant has entirely leaked out," Mahan replied, his voice trembling slightly. "The engine is severely overheated. Without a replacement part and proper tools, I can't get it to start. And we haven't seen a service station for the last 30 kilometers. Raman kicked the front tire of the car in sheer frustration, instantly regretting it as pain shot through his expensive leather shoe. Unbelievable. A 50-lakh luxury vehicle, defeated by a piece of rubber. Call a dealership. Demand a replacement vehicle immediately. "I tried, sir," Mahan said, holding up his phone. "There is absolutely no network coverage out here. 0 bars." Raman snatched his own phone from his pocket. It confirmed the grim reality: no service. He looked around the desolate landscape, feeling a rare, deeply uncomfortable sensation rising in his chest: helplessness. Money could buy almost anything, but it couldn't buy a cellular signal in the middle of a desert highway. Just as Raman was about to unleash another wave of fury on his driver, a figure appeared on the horizon, walking slowly along the edge of the road. As the figure drew closer, Raman's nose wrinkled in immediate distaste. It was a young man, looking no older than 25, wrapped in a torn, grease-stained brown shirt and faded trousers that had seen better decades. His face was smudged with soot, his hair was a wild, unkempt mane, and a rag of cloth was tied around his shoulder. He carried a small, heavy burlap sack that clinked with the distinct sound of scrap metal. To Raman, the man was a textbook vagrant. A beggar. Someone existing on the absolute fringes of society, unworthy of a second glance. The young man stopped a few paces away from the stranded luxury car. His dark eyes shifted from the steam pouring out of the engine to the furious rich man in the tailored suit. "Do you need some help, Sard?" the young man asked. His voice was surprisingly calm and steady, lacking the submissive, pleading tone Raman usually expected from people dressed in rags. Raman laughed, a cold, mocking sound. "Help? From you? What are you going to do, bet the car to start? Move along, boy. We don't have any spare change for you." Viram, the guard, took a step forward, resting his hand more firmly on his weapon. "You heard the boss. Keep moving." The young man didn't flinch. He looked at Viram, then back at Raman, completely unfazed by the hostility. "The car is overheating because your coolant assembly is choked and the pressurized hose has burst under the heat. If you keep standing here waiting for a miracle, your engine block will crack, and then even a tow truck won't save it." Mahan looked up from the engine, surprised. "He's right about the hose. But how do you know that?" "I know machines," the young man said simply. He walked over, ignoring Raman's glare, and peered directly into the steaming engine bay. It's a twin-turbo V6. Beautiful engine, but very delicate when it comes to thermal management. The electronic bypass valve is stuck open, which caused the pressure spike. Raman stared at the ragged stranger, his skepticism battling his desperation. The man spoke about high-end German engineering with the casual familiarity of a seasoned mechanic, despite looking like he slept under a bridge. "And who exactly are you?" Raman asked, his tone still arrogant, but slightly less dismissive. "A roadside mechanic who lost his shop." "My name is Kader," the young man replied, wiping a streak of grease from his cheek. "And what I am doesn't matter. What matters is that I can fix this so you can get to wherever you are going. For price, of course." Raman smiled knowingly. "Ah, there it is," he thought. "The hustle. Of course. Everyone has a price. How much do you want? 5,000 rupees? 10,000? Fix it, and I'll throw in a bonus. Cato looked Raman dead in the eye. I don't want your money, son. Keep your cash. I want something else. But first, let me see if I can actually get it running. Without waiting for permission, Cato dropped his heavy burlap sack onto that dusty ground. He reached inside and pulled out a makeshift to it. An old, rusted adjustable wrench, a pair of worn pliers, a roll of high-tensile industrial tape, and a small bottle of what looked like specialized chemical sealant. For the next 45 minutes, Raman, Mahan, and Viram watched in absolute silence as a masterclass unfolded before them. Cato worked with breathtaking efficiency. Despite the scorching heat radiating from the metal, he didn't complain once. He bypassed the faulty electronic valve manually using a piece of wire from his sack, wrapped the ruptured hose with layers of the heavy-duty industrial tape, sealed it with the chemical compound, and used a clever pressure release trick to bleed the air bubbles out of the cooling system. Mahan, Cato called out, his hands covered in fresh black grease. Pour whatever drinking water you have into the reservoir. Slowly. Mahan quickly emptied 3 large bottles of premium mineral water into the car's cooling system. Now, start the engine, Cato ordered. Mahan climbed into the driver's seat and pressed the ignition button. The starter motor whined for a fraction of a second, and then, with a smooth, powerful roar, the V6 engine came to life. The dashboard lights, which had been flashing red warnings earlier, settled into a calm, steady blue. The temperature gauge remained perfectly in the middle. Mahan stepped out of the car, looking at Cato with genuine reverence. It's working perfectly. The idle is completely stable. Raman checked his gold watch. He still had just enough time to make his meeting in Jaipur. A wave of relief washed over him, immediately followed by his natural business instincts. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a thick leather wallet, extracting a crisp stack of 10,000 rupee notes. Excellent work, boy, Raman said, holding out the cash. You're smarter than you look. Take this. It's much more than you'd earn begging or scavenging in a year. Cato didn't reach for the money. He stood up straight, wiped his greasy hands on his torn shirt, and shook his head. I told you before started, son. I don't want your money. Raman frowned, his hand freezing midair. He wasn't used to people refusing his cash. Then what do you want? A job. I can get you a spot as a junior mechanic in one of my logistics warehouses in Delhi. Standard salary, free housing. I don't want a job either, Cato said calmly. Then stop playing games. Raman snapped, his patience wearing thin. What is your price? Cato looked at the luxury car, then at Raman. I want your respect, son. And I want a promise. The next time you see someone on the side of the road who looks like me, someone hungry, someone dirty, someone you think is a beggar, don't look down on them. Don't assume they are useless just because the world has been unkind to them. That is my price. Keep your money. Before Raman could even process the words, Cato picked up his heavy burlap sack, slung it over his shoulder, and began walking away down the dusty highway, heading in the exact direction he had come from. Raman stood by his idling luxury car, the stack of cash still in his hand, watching the lone figure receding to the distance. For the first time in his life, the billionaire felt incredibly small. 3 months passed. The incident on the highway became a distant, albeit humbling, memory for Raman Oberoi. He had made it to Jaipur on time, closed the multi-crore merger, and his business empire had grown even larger. But a new, far more important event was now dominating his life. The wedding of his only daughter, Ananya. Ananya was the center of Raman's universe. After his wife passed away a decade ago, Raman had raised Ananya with all the luxury and affection the world could offer. She was highly educated, fiercely independent, and possessed a deeply compassionate heart, a trait she had inherited from her mother, much to Raman's occasional chagrin. Ananya had completed her master's degree in business management from London and had recently returned to India. A few weeks after her return, she had dropped a bombshell on her father. She was in love, and she wanted to marry the man of her choice. Raman, naturally protective and deeply conscious of his social status, had been furious at first. Who is he? He had demanded. Which industrial family does he belong to? What is his net worth? He doesn't belong to an industrial family, Papa, Ananya had replied softly but firmly. He is an engineer. A tech entrepreneur. He started a company from scratch that designs sustainable, low-cost agricultural machinery for poor farmers. He is brilliant, kind, and he makes me incredibly happy. Please, just meet him once. After weeks of begging and emotional standoffs, Raman had finally relented. He agreed to host a formal dinner at his sprawling mansion in the ultra-luxury neighborhood of Altynes, Delhi, where Ananya could introduce her mysterious suitor. The evening the dinner arrived. The Oberoi mansion was glowing with soft, elegant lighting. The manicured lawns were pristine, and our catering team from a five-star hotel was preparing a lavish spread. Raman paced up and down the grand living room, wearing a tailored silk sherwani, his anxiety mounting. He had invited a few of his closest business associates to the dinner as well, wanting to ensure the young man was thoroughly vetted by the elite. "Relax, Papa," Ananya said, walking down the grand marble staircase. She looked stunning in a simple yet elegant pastel lehenga. "He's not coming here to rob you. He's just a regular, wonderful human being." "A regular human being is not enough for an Oberoi, Ananya," Raman grumbled, adjusting his gold cufflinks. "He needs to be able to provide for you. He needs to match our stature." Just then, the grand double doors of the mansion opened. The butler stepped inside, announcing, "Sir, the guest has arrived." Ananya's face lit up with a brilliant smile as she ran toward the entrance. Raman braced himself, putting on his most formidable, intimidating billionaire persona, and walked toward the foyer. A young man stepped into the light of the massive crystal chandelier. He was dressed in a sharp, impeccably tailored midnight blue band gala suit. His hair was neatly styled, his face was clean-shaven, and his polished leather shoes reflected the ambient light. He carried himself with an effortless, quiet confidence that immediately commanded respect. Raman stopped dead in his tracks. The breath caught completely in his throat. The face was clean, the clothes were worth lakhs, and the posture was regal, but the eyes were unmistakable. The deep, calm, piercing dark eyes were burned into Raman's memory. It was Capo, the beggar from the highway. The vagrant who had fixed his car with rusted tools and tape. Raman felt the ground beneath his feet tilt. His mind raced at 1,000,000 miles an hour, trying to reconcile the image of the grease-stained boy on the desert road with a sophisticated tech entrepreneur standing in his living room. Ananya walked up to Capo, happily taking his arm. "Papa, this is Capo. Capo, this is my father, Raman Oberoi." Capo looked at Raman. Not a single trace of surprise crossed his face. Instead, a slight, knowing smile played at the corners of his lips. He stepped forward and extended his hand. "Namaste, Mr. Oberoi. It is an absolute honor to finally meet you in a more formal setting." Raman stared at the extended hand, completely paralyzed. The business associate standing behind him muttered words of admiration. "Ah, Capo. The founder of Viome Technologies," one of the billionaires exclaimed, stepping forward. "Raman, your daughter has found a gem. This young man's company was just valued at $2 billion after their new solar-powered tractor design went global. Wall Street is raving about him." "A $2 billion company," Raman's mind screamed. "He isn't a beggar. He is a billionaire." Finding his voice with immense effort, Raman cleared his throat and shook Capo's hand. His grip was firm, just like it had been when he handled the heavy wrench on the highway. Let's sit down for dinner," Raman managed to say, his voice strained. Throughout the dinner, Raman sat in a state of stunned silence, watching Capo navigate the conversation with brilliant intellect and humility. He spoke effortlessly about global economics, agricultural reform, and corporate philanthropy. The elite guests were utterly charmed by him. Ananya looked at him with eyes full of adoration. After dinner, as the guests drifted out into the garden for drinks, Capo politely excused himself and walked out onto that quiet side balcony overlooking the fountains. Raman seized the opportunity. He followed Capo out, ensuring they were completely alone. "You knew," Raman said bluntly, stepping onto that balcony. "You knew exactly who I was that day on the highway." Capo turned around, holding a glass of water, the moonlight catching his sharp silhouette. "Of course I knew, Mr. Oberoi. Your face is on the cover of every business magazine in the country. And Ananya had shown me your pictures many times." "Then why?" Raman demanded, his confusion turning into a strange mix of embarrassment and awe. "Why were you dressed like a vagrant? Why were you walking alone on a desert highway with a sack of scrap metal? Why did you pretend to be a penniless mechanic?" Capo let out a soft laugh and took a sip of water. "I wasn't pretending, Mr. Oberoi. That is the twist. I grew up in an orphanage in a small village in Rajasthan. I had nothing. But I had a passion for machines. An old roadside mechanic took me in and taught me everything he knew. He passed away when I was 18, leaving me his rusted tools, the same tools I used to fix your car." Capo walked over to the balcony railing, looking out at the city lights. "I worked hard. I got a scholarship, went to IIT, built my company, and made wealth beyond my wildest dreams. But every year, on the anniversary of the day my mentor found me starving on the street, I leave my luxury life behind for 1 week. I put on my old clothes, take his rusted tools, and walk the highways. I do it to ground myself. To remember where I came from. To remind myself that a man's worth is defined by what he can do, not by what he owns. Raman felt a profound wave of shame wash over him. He remembered his arrogant words on the highway. "What are you going to do? Bet the car to start? Move along, boy. We don't have any spare change for you." "The day I met you on the highway," Kato continued, turning to look at Raman, "I was on the final day of my journey. I saw your car broken down. I could have easily called my corporate security team to come assist you, or I could have revealed my identity. But I wanted to see the real Raman Oberoi. I wanted to see the man who raised the woman I love. And I failed your test miserably," Raman said softly, looking down at the marble floor. "I treated you like dirt. I insulted you." "You did," Kato agreed openly, lacking any malice. "You saw a man in rags and assumed he had no dignity, no knowledge, and no value. But you also learned a lesson. When I refused your money, I saw the shift in your eyes. You realized that some things cannot be bought." Raman looked up, his eyes filled with a rare sincerity. He walked up to the young man who was about to become his son-in-law. "Kato, I have spent my entire life believing that money is the ultimate measure of a man," Raman said, his voice thick with emotion. "Tonight, you have completely shattered that belief. You fixed my car when my millions couldn't, and tonight, you have fixed my broken perspective on life. I am deeply sorry for how I treated you." Kato smiled, a warm, genuine expression that instantly erased the tension between them. He reached out and placed a hand on Raman's shoulder. "There is no need to apologize, Papa," Kato said gently, using the endearing term for the first time. "The past is gone. I didn't fix your car to humiliate you. I did it because it needed fixing. And I am here today because I love your daughter, and I want to build a future with her family." Raman felt a tear slip down his cheek, which he quickly wiped away. He smiled, a genuine, unburdened smile, and wrapped Kato in a tight, fatherly embrace. A month later, the grandest wedding Delhi had ever seen took place. But amid all the luxury, the flowers, and the elite guests, the most talked about element was a small, beautifully polished glass display case placed right at the entrance of the wedding hall. Inside the case, resting on a bed of velvet, was a rusted adjustable wrench and a roll of industrial tape. It was a reminder to everyone who entered that true value is never found in the clothes a man wears, but in the skills he possesses, the humility he carries, and the character he displays when no one is watching.